Welcome to the Home Downsizing Show. My name is Ben Souchek, your host and the owner and founder of Home Downsizing Solutions. With the Home Downsizing Show, I want to provide you the information and resources to make the downsizing of your house stress and hassle-free. So sit back and enjoy the show. Thank you for joining us. Hello, this is Ben Souchek, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Home Downsizing Show podcast. My company, Home Downsizing Solutions, specializes in making it fast, easy, and very hassle-free to transition from your house to senior living. We do all that we can to make that as stress and hassle-free as possible. On this week's episode, I'd like to go through another chapter of my new book, Home Downsizing Secrets. A very common item that almost anybody that is looking to sell a house and transition to senior living will encounter, which are the realistic expectations when selling a house. If you want to sell your house, you will need to have realistic expectations of what you will net from the sale of the house. The real estate market, just like everything in life, runs in cycles. There are seller's markets where demand is high and it's easy to sell a house, and there are buyer's markets where demand is low and it can be a big challenge to find any buyers for a house. If we are in a high demand seller's market like currently in 2021 or earlier this year in 2022, houses in nice condition in desirable neighborhoods can sometimes get offers of more than their asking price. In low demand markets, like after the market correction in 2008, it seemed to some home sellers like they couldn't even give their house away. There were many houses that were on the market whose listings expired or were canceled because they weren't able to attract any buyers. Depending on which part of the market cycle we are in when you want to sell your house, will dictate what expectations you should have when you sell. As homeowners found out in 2008, market conditions can change very quickly. Homeowners that did not like our company's offers to purchase their house in early 2008 were calling us back in 2009, asking if I still had an interest in buying their house for what I had offered in 2008, which wasn't an option at that point. Home prices went down by 25 to 40% or more, depending on a few factors during that market correction. Here, we will discuss the most likely information for an average market. Statistics vary from area to area, but typically houses that sell for 3 to 12% less than the original listing price. These are of the houses that actually do sell. This is a gross selling price at the time of sale, not the net amount to the seller. Depending on the market and geographic area of the house, I have seen where only 40 to 60% of the houses that are listed actually sell. In high demand markets, this number will be much less. This is a statistic that a lot of sellers don't realize when putting their house on the market. This will vary from market to market and with the type of market you are in, but you need to be aware of your market if you want to sell. There are a few items that will determine the net amount that you will receive from the sale of your house. The initial asking price, the condition of your house compared to your competition, the whole house inspection, appraisal, seller closing cost, and incentives that the buyer negotiates with the seller for some or all of their buyer closing cost. Let's talk about the initial asking price. Understandably, a seller doesn't want to price their house too low and leave money on the table. But there is also a danger in pricing a house too high. Sometimes the seller will think, or an agent will tell the seller, let's start a little high with the price and we can always come down. The danger to this type of pricing is that it will scare away potential buyers and your house won't get any attention. By the time you lower the price to what is competitive, the house will have been on the market a longer amount of time than usual, and with that becoming a stale listing. And potential buyers will wonder, what is wrong with the house for being on the market so long? Then the house will sit even longer or just won't sell at all. If you price the house a little lower than what potential buyers are expecting, you may get a lot of interest in the house, which may create an auction-type environment with multiple interested buyers and offers. The condition of your house. As mentioned in other chapters of the book, you need to be aware of the condition of your property versus what will be the condition of your competition. Do the other houses on the market have updated kitchens, bathrooms, new paint, floor coverings, etc.? New windows, roof, heating, and air conditioning to make the house more energy efficient? New exterior paint or siding? Established, nice-looking landscaping, fences, and decks? If your competition has these improvements, but your house does not, no matter how nice you think your house is, a typical buyer will not pay for your house what they would pay for an updated house. And just because your furnace and AC that is 15 or 20 years old may work just fine, it will not be comparable to a furnace and AC that is only a couple of years old. Just because you updated your kitchen with new cabinets and laminate countertops several years ago, it will not be comparable to a kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. A whole house inspection. Whole house inspections are something that typically every buyer will have performed. As mentioned elsewhere before in the book, if there are any deficiencies with the house, and there almost always are, this will most likely be another opportunity for the buyer to renegotiate with the seller. The bottom line, this will affect the seller's bottom line of what they will net from the sale of their house. The appraisal. Just like the whole house inspection, if the appraiser identifies any deficiencies, especially deficiencies that a lender will demand be corrected before providing a loan on a house, will give the buyer an opportunity to renegotiate with the seller. And the amount a seller thinks they will receive from the sale of the house will be reduced. The closing costs for the seller. Closing costs such as title insurance, the closing fee for the title company to process the sales transaction, recording fees at the county courthouse, etc., usually end up costing somewhere between 1 to 3% of the sales amount, depending on your state and county. Closing costs for the buyer. For more than 25 years that I have been involved in real estate, it has become very common for buyers to not have more than the 2 to 5% down payment needed to secure a loan to purchase a house, much less funds for their closing costs. And if a buyer has additional funds, they seem to use them for things to furnish the house instead of paying for the actual cost associated with purchasing the house. Therefore, it becomes another area for negotiation, with the buyer asking the seller to pay for these closing costs. A seller doesn't have to pay for these items, but that may be the only way the buyer will be able to finance and buy the house. When all of these items are taken into account, it's very typical for a seller to net approximately 75 to 85% of their asking price or less if the house sells. So when a real estate agent says they can sell a house for, say, $100,000, for an example, realize that you most likely will only net $75,000 to $85,000 if your house sells. Real estate agents typically always talk in gross numbers, not net. with one reason being that they are compensated based on the gross selling price, not the net. Real estate agents typically provide a seller's preliminary disclosure statement when listing a house to show a seller what they should net when they sell. However, this will typically only show a seller the commission paid to the agent, the traditional seller's closing cost, and tax proration. The net amount that is provided on this disclosure statement rarely, if ever, is actually achieved, except in the best of market conditions. This disclosure statement generally does not take into account any of the reality of selling a house, such as that most houses never sell for asking price, a buyer will generally always offer less than the asking price, the buyer will typically negotiate items due to the whole house inspection and appraisal, and the buyer will typically expect the seller to pay for some or all of the buyer's closing costs. If you are considering listing your house with an agent, you may want to ask them a couple of questions. 1, ask if they will guarantee how much you will net from the sale of the house. And 2, are you willing to adjust your commission if you net less than what your seller's disclosure statement indicates? I will bet that you will be less than a little amused by their answers, if you get answers at all. Another thing you can do is to contact a few different title companies and ask them what a seller will typically net versus the gross amount of the listing and selling prices. Ask them if sellers typically pay some of the closing costs for buyers. And ask them how often houses will sell for the original asking price when a seller lists a house. I encourage you to ask a few real estate agents and title or closing companies about these various transaction costs so that you have a realistic expectation of what you will net from the sale of your house. To summarize, putting your house on the market may be a good way to sell your house. Just know the realities of what you will encounter with this process. Like many sellers that have gone through this process, you can become very frustrated initially, thinking you will receive a certain dollar amount from the sale of your house, only to realize later at the closing table that your net amount will be much less. And by the time you are sitting at the closing table, ready to sign closing documents, that is too late of a time to do anything else. Again, thank you for listening in on this week's show of the Home Downsizing Show. And if you'd like a free copy of the book Home Downsizing Secrets, just go to homedownsizing or call our office toll free 888-855-291-5005. Again, that's 855-291-5005. Or just go to the website homedownsizing-secrets.com. And of course, if there's anything that we can assist you with in the sale of your house and the transition to any type of senior living, just give us a call and we would be happy to do all that we can for you. Thank you again for tuning in and look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Home Downsizing Show. For additional information and resources on home downsizing, just go to homedownsizingblueprint.com. That's homedownsizingblueprint.com. Or if you're ready to sell your house and downsize, just go to homedownsizing-solutions.com. That's homedownsizing-solutions.com. And if you have ideas to improve our show or topics that you'd like us to cover or have any questions that we can answer, just call our office toll free 855-291-5005. That's 855-291-5005. Thank you.